Hey everybody, welcome back to Tim Travels. I'm Terry, your host, as always. Coming to you from Holly Springs, Mississippi. And I just wanted to do a little video, just let everybody know I'm still alive and kicking. My last video I talked about getting those 4 vaccines, and I think what happened was my body was kind of overwhelmed dealing with the vaccines, and I got sick. I don't know if it was the flu, I don't know what it was, but I'm kind of coming out of it now. My energy's back. I'm just sick of blowing my nose. I did take some, antihistamine, but I don't like taking that stuff much because I feel like the more you take, the more you gotta take. So I'm just kind of letting it run its course. It's nice to see the sunshine. There's been some crazy weather, and I've been I've been running a lot. There's a few people been talking about it on YouTube about how things seem to be picking up at Prime. But I went from Phoenix, Arizona, all the way to Tacoma, Philadelphia, Atlanta, LA. Actually, I did go to LA, Lower Alabama, and I just been on the East Coast. I was down in Florida. This load is actually heading to Rogers, Arkansas. And then I think I'm gonna go up to Springfield and maybe pick up a PSD student. So we'll have to see what goes on with that. But a few things to talk about. Today's January 10th already. We're already 10 days into this 366 day year. Yeah, that's right. February's gonna have 29 days because it's a leap year. So what happened today? George Foreman was born on this day. George Foreman, heavyweight champ. Actually, he's the oldest heavyweight champ, boxing champ, heavyweight champion of the world, the oldest guy to ever hold that title. He was born in Marshall, Texas. Also born on this day, Rod Stewart. Now, here's a question for you. Who do you think is older, Rod Stewart or George Foreman? Well, I'll tell you, it's Rod Stewart. He was born in 1945. George Foreman was born in 1949. On this day in 2016, and man, it just seems like yesterday, David Bowie died on this day in 2016. He was 68 years old. And the reason I remember that is because he was the same age as Glenn Frey. Glenn Frey died at age 68. So interesting stuff. Also on this day, January 10th, the pamphlet Common Sense was published by Thomas Paine. Very influential on thinking in the days leading up to the Revolutionary War. But you should read it if you haven't. It's not that long. I think it's called a pamphlet. It's about, I got it on the bookshelf at home. I think it's like 29 pages. But it's pretty interesting to read. So I recommend that if you ever get a chance and you want something short to read Common Sense. So trucking world, there's some interesting stuff going on. One thing that I just mentioned that people feel like things are picking up, and I have been, it's kind of weird because I feel like I've been super busy since I left home on January 2nd, yet I still had a 34 between loads. So I guess technically I haven't really been that busy, but I got 4 loads done this week, probably gross, over $5,000, which is cool because I was in the hole for a little bit last week. But I'm happy with that. I only went in the hole for 1 week, for over because of my Christmas vacation. But people have been talking about things picking up a little bit, and that's what I call microeconomics, right? Like, how is it affecting you? What are you seeing? Do you have more money in your wallet? Do you have more money in your bank account? But on a more macro level, I read a report that Morgan Stanley analysts think that probably inventories have been depleted to, or will be depleted to the point where shippers will have to be shipping significantly more product to get back to like a level place where they like to have inventories, where distributors like to have inventories. So hopefully that bodes well for the trucking industry. I think that with refrigerated, it's a little less cyclical, although, when things slow down, they slow down for everybody, because there's a lot of overlap between types of trucks. And without regard to LTL, when I was in dry van, I took a lot of stuff that I've also taken in a reefer, but I also took a lot of stuff that I've seen on the back of flatbeds. And, so a van can take some of the stuff that reefers take that doesn't have to be temp controlled, or this time of year doesn't need to be temp controlled. And so there's a lot of overlap, and we'll just have to see what happens. But I think that if inventories of durable goods, like say washers and dryers, are down, and non-perishable stuff like cleaning products, etc., are down, that there may be more work for temp control carriers too. So we'll just keep our fingers crossed. I mean, I'm still not like super optimistic about 2024. I'm cautiously optimistic, and we'll see how it plays out. The other thing that I thought was really interesting is back in December, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the First Circuit, and if you're keeping score at home, the First Circuit is basically New England, not New York. New York's in the Second Circuit. So think the New England states is the First Circuit. And the First Circuit issued an opinion in a case that had been brought against CRST by a guy named Juan Carlos Montoya. And I was like, wait, is that the dude from Princess Bride? But anyway, there's a guy named Juan Carlos Montoya, and he and a group of similarly situated plaintiffs brought suit against CRST and I think CRST Intermodal. And it was over sleeper berth. And I think, and if somebody works at CRST, they could correct me, but I'm pretty sure that CRST, it runs only teams, and I'm pretty sure it's forced. In other words, you don't work at CRST if you're not on a team. And what this suit is about is that the time in the sleeper berth by these teams is not being compensated. And there were a number of issues, and this was a suit brought under the Fair Labor Standards Act, the FLSA. And what the court held is that any time spent in the sleeper by a driver over 8 hours a day in a team situation, I'm pretty sure that's going to be the caveat. In a team situation, anything over 8 hours is compensable. So, for instance, let's say that you drove, let's say that somebody is driving and they drive for 8 hours and in a at the beginning of the day. So from 0000 to 0800, they drive 8 hours. Then you get out of the sleeper berth and you get in the seat and you drive for, let's say, 10 and a half hours. Then you get back in the sleeper. So that now that time from 1830 until midnight would be compensable. So that 5.5 hours that you'd be in the sleeper under this First Circuit decision would be compensable. And that's a big deal because there's a lot of companies that have forced teams. Every FedEx contractor, ground contractor, pretty much every over-the-road FedEx ground truck you see, they're teams. CR England went to forced teams. There are probably other companies out there. UPS, the UPS OTRs, Estes OTRs, a lot of those are forced teams. So it's pretty interesting. And some of the stuff that they basically said was, like CRST was like, oh, well, when you're in the sleeper, your time is your own, and they're like, nah, it's a little tiny box in a moving truck. And, yeah, you could sleep and maybe you could surf the web on your phone, but it's not like you could go outside and, do some gardening or change the oil in your car because the truck's moving. And so they're basically like, hey, over 8 hours, which is really interesting because the sleeper berth time is 10, but keep in mind, the regs say that you have to have 8 hours in the sleeper berth, so you could be like off duty the other 2 and get your 10-hour break. But it's a really important decision because it could impact a lot of the trucking industry, including TNT at Prime. So I don't know. I mean, I'm curious to see what that would mean for like somebody that's got a CDL, they're in TNT, they're training, I'm driving, and they've done 16 hours in the sleeper in a 24-hour period. That'll be interesting to see. Now, I'm pretty confident that that's never going to apply, that holding by the First Circuit is never going to apply in a situation where the truck is not moving. So, for example, there have been times when I have a trainee on the truck and we go to the terminal. And typically, if I have a trainee on the truck, I tell them to go get a bunk room because we need our space and time apart. But let's say we're just, like I mentioned, I got a 34 the other day. Let's say we were just sitting at a Love's. Well, then that's a situation where the person could come and go as they please, and that's not going to be, like you're not stuck in the truck. So I don't think the the overtime would apply to that. So anyway, just some interesting stuff going on in the industry as always, and we'll just have to see what happens going forward. And if you're wondering about what happens next with that First Circuit decision, so that decision about anything over 8 hours being compensable is now the law in the First Circuit in New England. If another circuit, say the Fifth Circuit, which is like Texas and stuff, let's say the Fifth Circuit said, no, that's not, we don't find that. Then what you would have is what is called a circuit split. And a circuit split, in other words, where two federal circuits issued holdings that were inconsistent with each other, that could trigger an appeal to the Supreme Court, a circuit split. But here's the thing. I don't know that CRST is going to appeal this to the U.S. Supreme Court. the reason I say that is because it in a weird way, the court has been fair. This court has not been super aligned with corporations, and I mean, they are. Don't get me wrong, but I don't know that CRST wants to take the chance that the U.S. Supreme Court affirms the holding of the First Circuit, because if they do, that will be the law of the land, and CRST will not only have screwed themselves over, although this is a pro-worker decision on the First Circuit's part, but they will basically they will really cause an upheaval in the trucking industry. They will be the pariahs. They will be the guys that get beat up in the bathroom at the at the ATA meetings. I suspect that there's going to be some plaintiff's attorney who brings a similar case in another circuit just to see what happens. And then if they get a circuit split, then it's going to go to the Supreme Court. Or if CRST or other companies that kind of do the same thing, if they start losing everywhere, they're just going to have to appeal it to the Supreme Court, or they're going to try to get cert in the Supreme Court, because they can't. That's changing their business model appreciably. And so we'll have to see. So I don't know what's going to happen with TNT if we're running in New England, because right now that's the law in New England. And I don't know if I did not see if there was an enforcement date, if there was a stay issued pending appeal to the Supreme Court. I didn't see any of that, but it's still an important decision. So anyway, I will, thanks for tuning in. Hopefully my chest will clear out. I'll be able to talk more. I'll check with you guys later. Be safe out there. Bye.